Everyone knows the formula, the billionaire playboy who's secretly a hero. It's the classic Batman disguise. But long before Bruce Wayne, another masked Avenger had already mastered the art, Zorro, the wealthy nobleman who pretended to be a lazy coward to protect his secret identity, fooling everyone, especially his greatest love, Lolita. But the Zorro we're revisiting today isn't from the movies. It's the 90s anime version, which took that classic premise and cranked it up with a massive dose of anime flair. In this version, the corrupt military doesn't just steal taxes. They hire ninjas with hypnotic swords, assassins wielding giant boomerangs, and even a guy who controls a creature that looks suspiciously like King Kong. The romantic drama dialed up to 11, with Diego suffering in silence while Zorro becomes the ultimate heartthrob of California. It's the legend we all know, but with more heart, a kid's sidekick, and the kind of wild twists only anime can deliver. So today on the channel, The Legend of Zorro, anime style. We're in 19th century California, and things are grim. The Spanish army calls the shots in the small town of Santasco, treating the people like their personal piggy bank. They steal money and food, and even execute anyone who dares to complain. It's in this chaotic setting that we meet Diego de la Vega, a wealthy young man returning from his studies in Spain. On the same ship are his childhood friend, Lolita, and his young adopted brother, Bernard. They're on a secret, spy-like mission, trying to help a man named Chichita and his family flee the country. Chichita's crime: teaching the people to think about freedom. Lolita asks Diego for help hiding the family, but the mission fails. The soldiers show up, arrest the couple, and Diego, well, he freezes up, acting like a complete coward. Lolita is furious with him. Later, a welcome party is held for Diego, but the mood sours when Sergeant Gonzalez announces that Chichita will be publicly executed. That's when the tables turn. Diego slips away unnoticed, and out of nowhere, a masked figure appears. Zorro, the protector of the oppressed. With his sword, he stops the execution, humiliates the army, and helps Chichita and his wife escape. The crowd goes wild, but Commander Raymond, the head of the soldiers, is left fuming at the hero's audacity. The next day, Lieutenant Gabriel, Raymond's right-hand man, finds the fugitive family near the sea. He's ready to finish the job, but Zorro appears again, defeats Gabriel in a tough fight, and ensures the family finally reaches freedom. One night, bandits attack and steal a poor family's wine wagons. The next day, the army shows up to collect taxes, and since the family can't pay, their wheat is confiscated. Diego, who is present, once again plays the coward in front of Lolita and Bernard, who are sick of his antics. We soon discover the mastermind behind the robberies, a local merchant named Brown. His plan is simple yet brilliant: steal everyone else's wine to create a shortage and then sell his own at an exorbitant price. The next targets are the barrels belonging to the Vega and Pulido families. During the transport, the bandits attack. Diego, true to character, feigns panic and runs off. Lolita tries to fight the men but ends up cornered. It's the perfect cue for Zorro to make his entrance. He saves Lolita and, with Sergeant Gonzalez's help, fights off the bandits. But Zorro's plan is bigger. He whispers to Bernard that he's marked all the stolen barrels with a Z and gives him a mission. Bernard and his friends find the barrels in Brown's backyard. That night, the boy dresses up as Little Zorro to retrieve the wine but is captured. Zorro storms Brown's shop just as Commander Raymond is there accepting a bride. The hero exposes the entire scheme, and the head bandit appears with Bernard as a hostage. The boy manages to escape on his own, and Zorro defeats the villain. The big twist? The barrels marked with a Z were filled with water. They were just bait to prove Brown's guilt. Zorro takes the merchant's money to return to the poor family and vanishes. In the end, Bernard reveals he knows Diego's secret identity. The two share a touching moment, and Bernard decides to become Little Zorro, the masked hero's official partner. Diego's reputation in Santasco is at rock bottom. He spends his days sleeping in the sun, becoming the town's laughingstock and disappointing his father, Don Alejandro. Lolita, his betrothed, isn't happy either. She remembers the letters he sent from Spain, talking about his swordsmanship training, but now all she sees is a lazy coward. To complicate Diego's love life, the dashing Lieutenant Gabriel shows up and asks for Lolita's hand in marriage. Her parents explain she's already promised to Diego, which infuriates Gabriel. He challenges Diego to a duel for Lolita's hand. She even hopes Diego will fight and show some spine, but he refuses, suffers a public humiliation, and walks away looking like the town's biggest coward. Lolita then shuts Gabriel down hard, telling him she hates all soldiers. Now it's his turn to be ridiculed. Unable to handle rejection, Gabriel resorts to his plan B, going full psychopath. He throws Diego in jail and hires an arsonist to burn down Lolita's father's warehouse. He then offers to capture the culprit in exchange for her hand. Lolita sees through his dirty scheme, becomes enraged, and Gabriel simply kidnaps her. With Bernard's help, Diego escapes from prison and, as Zorro, captures the arsonist, who confesses where Lolita is being held. Zorro raids the hideout, defeats the guards, and rescues Lolita, who embraces him as her savior.
Zorro!
Gabriel appears, and Zorro defeats him in a duel, humiliating him for his cowardice. The next day, the love triangle gets a new angle. Lolita tells her mother she's forgotten Diego, and now wants to marry Zorro. On a sunny morning, Spanish soldiers are on their routine patrol, but instead of keeping the peace, they decide to play the bullies and pick a fight with a fruit vendor. When they start beating the man, Lolita can't take it and yells for them to stop. Diego, seeing his girlfriend surrounded, jumps in to defend her, but things get ugly, and he nearly gets hurt. Luckily, Gabriel appears to restore order, apologizing for his men's behavior. In the midst of the chaos, Oro Perez, a childhood friend of Diego and Lolita, appears. Oro is Diego's polar opposite, brave, hot-headed, and a die-hard fan of the Spanish army, dreaming of enlisting. Lolita tries to open his eyes, explaining that the soldiers are corrupt, but Oro won't listen. Little does he know, his own father, Don Ricardo, is planning a rebellion with a stockpile of gunpowder hidden in the mountains. Oro overhears the plan and without a second thought, rats them out to the army. Gabriel believes the boy, finds the gunpowder, and blows it all up. As a reward, Oro finally achieves his dream and becomes a soldier, but the dream quickly turns into a nightmare. Don Ricardo kicks him out of the house, and the entire town begins to hate him. Gabriel, wanting to get rid of the hot-headed rookie, invents a fake mission. If Oro finds Zorro's hideout, he'll be promoted. Diego, realizing his friend has walked into a trap, devises a plan. As Zorro, he lures Oro and the army into a trap at a dam. While Zorro distracts the soldiers, little Zorro opens the floodgates, inundating the area. Gabriel is furious and expels Oro from the army. The next day, Diego consoles his friend who, full of regret, makes peace with his father. Now, Oro has become Zorro's #1 fan, creating a whole new kind of problem for Diego. The town of Santasco is celebrating its annual rodeo. The main event? Crossing a rope suspended over the ocean to grab a bag of gold. Diego is one of the competitors and, for a change, wants to impress Lolita. He's almost there when he overhears Lolita say she truly loves Zorro and would only marry him. Heartbroken, Diego deliberately loses his balance and falls into the water, leaving everyone disappointed. Later, Diego, Lolita, and Bernard visit the neighboring town of Puerto Ringo, a place that seems like paradise. The mayor, Santos, refuses to raise taxes, defying the Spanish army to protect his people, but not everything is as perfect as it seems. Gabriel and Gonzalez are in town, disguised, and Diego senses trouble. Bernard befriends Gina, the mayor's daughter, and they discover a mass of dead fish near a place called Whale Rock. It turns out that years ago, a ship from Santos' company sank there with a secret cargo of poison for the army. Now, the poison is leaking, and Gabriel is using it to blackmail the mayor. Gina is devastated to learn about her father's past and runs away. Diego consoles her. The next day, Santos, racked with guilt, takes a boat out alone in the middle of a storm to try to fix the leak. When the others try to help him, the army, led by Gabriel, stops them. Gabriel even punches Diego, knocking him into the sea, but in the nick of time, Zorro appears. He fights off the soldiers, buying the townspeople time to rescue the mayor. In the end, Santos is saved, the poison barrels are removed, and he is forgiven by the town and his daughter. To complete the scene, Diego clumsily emerges from the water, ensuring no one suspects his secret identity. Bernard is napping in the forest when he's awakened by the sound of bandits on horseback. He realizes they're heading for Lolita's house and rushes to warn Diego. Zorro springs into action, but the bandits, led by a man named Drago, have a trick up their sleeve, a hypnotic red jewel on their sword. With it, they make Lolita's parents reveal where their valuables are hidden. Lolita, however, wakes up, throws a lantern at Drago and breaks the spell. The bandits flee, but Zorro intercepts them. The jewel, however, is like Zorro's kryptonite, and he ends up wounded. The army arrives, the bandits escape, and of course, Zorro gets the blame.
I mustn't let him get away with this.
Drop your sword! You're under arrest, Zorro!
To make matters worse, a valuable jewel is missing, and Gabriel accuses Zorro of stealing it. But here comes the plot twist. It was Gabriel himself who hired the bandits to frame Zorro and play the hero for Lolita. He takes the jewel from Drago to return it and orders the gang to continue with their plan. The next day, Gabriel gives the jewel to Lolita, but she mentions a crucial detail. The bandit leader was wounded in the arm. This panics Gabriel. Bernard, ever the detective, makes a list of everyone in town with an arm injury to help Diego. Their investigation leads them to a traveling circus, where the clown is none other than Drago. He kidnaps Lolita and flees. The chase ends on the bandits' ship. Zorro and Little Zorro launch an attack. Lolita, having recovered, warns Zorro not to look at the jewel. The hero manages to defeat Drago and hands the gang over to Sergeant Gonzalez. Drago confesses he was blackmailed by an officer, but before he can name him, Gabriel appears and orders his men to execute all the bandits to tie up loose ends. He tries to shoot Zorro, but the heroes use the jewel's power to vanish in a cloud of smoke. Now Zorro knows Gabriel is the true villain and swears that one day he will make him pay. Diego and Bernard are on a family business mission, herding sheep to a ranch, when they run into an army roadblock. Commander Raymond is grinning from ear to ear, and for good reason. He's about to get his hands on the fortune of a wealthy man who just died, a certain Carlo Fernandez. It turns out that 6 months ago, at the man's funeral, a lawyer showed up with a bombshell will. Fernandez had a daughter, Hannah, who is the sole heir. The law gave the lawyer 6 months to find her. If not, all the money goes to the army. Now the roadblocks make perfect sense. They're to prevent Hannah from arriving on time. And speaking of whom, Diego and Bernard find a girl passed out by the river. Guess who? Hannah herself. She was fleeing from the soldiers and desperately needs the money to save the orphanage her mother founded. Diego, being the brains of the operation, comes up with a plan. Disguise Hannah as a shepherd. They even manage to fool the ever-bumbling Sergeant Gonzalez by bribing him with a bottle of wine. But upon arriving home, Hannah thanks Diego with a kiss on the cheek. Lolita sees this, has a jealous fit, and ends up revealing that the shepherd is a girl.
Diego? Huh? What do you mean, her?
No, Lolita, you're getting it all wrong again.
Lieutenant Gabriel, who is no fool, figures it all out, storms the Vega house, and arrests both Diego and Hannah. In jail, the army celebrates. With the heiress behind bars, all they have to do is wait for the deadline to pass. But Lolita, feeling guilty, decides to help. She distracts Gonzalez, with more wine of course, while Diego hatches a new plan. It's a stroke of mad genius. A crowd of citizens dresses up as Zorro to create chaos in town, like a citywide game of whack-a-mole with the soldiers. While the town becomes a carnival of Zorros, Bernard and Lolita free the pair. Gabriel nearly catches Hannah, but the real Zorro appears at the last second. He whisks her away to the notary's office, and her proof of identity, a golden crucifix, was hidden inside a loaf of bread. Hannah finally signs the papers, secures her inheritance, and saves the orphanage. Zorro disappears into the night, leaving the army empty-handed. Elsewhere, Diego is being bossed around by Maria, who treats him like the household handyman. He's clearly fed up with it. To make matters worse, he runs into Lolita, who has become an astrology enthusiast and warns him that his horoscope predicts a string of bad luck. Diego, ever the skeptic, ignores her. Meanwhile, in town, we meet Sancho, the newspaper boy who has become a local hero for publishing articles praising Zorro. The public adores him, but Diego predicts this will cause trouble with the army, and sure enough, Commander Raymond, irritated by Zorro's popularity, decides he needs to silence Sancho in his own way. A worried Lolita goes to warn Sancho that his horoscope also predicts danger, but the newspaper boy, just like Diego, doesn't believe in such things. That night, after celebrating with friends at the tavern, Sancho is walking home when he hears the sound of a guitar, followed by a gunshot. He drops dead on the spot. Suspicion falls on a mysterious guitarist who is at the tavern, and Diego tells Bernard to keep an eye on him. Lolita feels guilty, and even Diego starts to think maybe he should have listened to the stars. The situation worsens when the army interrupts the funeral, spreading the lie that Zorro himself killed Sancho. Bernard follows the guitarist named Sabat and discovers the obvious. He's a hired assassin working for the army. The next day, as the town tries to hold the funeral again, Zorro appears. Sabat, hidden in the church tower, shoots him, but it was a trap. Zorro, who was expecting the shot, gets up and reveals the true assassin's location. Little Zorro smashes Sabat's guitar, exposing the rifle hidden inside. To tie up loose ends and avoid being exposed, Raymond orders his soldiers to execute Sabat on the spot. Without the assassin to confess, Zorro at least demands that Raymond allow the funeral to proceed. Under pressure, the commander gives in. The town finally says goodbye to its hero, vowing to keep his newspaper alive.
It's been decided to continue the Santasco Weekly in honor of Sancho's memory.
We meet Pancho, a kind old man known for his tall tales. His latest is that he's found a piece of the legendary pirate Captain Kidd's treasure. No one believes him, of course, until the army shows up to confiscate his findings. During the commotion, Pancho is disappointed by Diego's cowardice, as he does nothing to help. So Pancho has an idea. He strikes a deal with Diego's father. He will take the boy on his treasure hunt to make a man out of him, and in return, Don Alejandro will finance the expedition. Diego, Bernard, and Pancho set off on their adventure. Meanwhile, the army analyzes one of Pancho's pots and finds a gold coin. The treasure is real. They send Sergeant Gonzalez to spy on the group. The expedition is tough. Diego and Bernard are exhausted and doubt the story, but Pancho gives an inspiring speech about the importance of dreams. Shortly after, a tunnel collapses, but Diego miraculously finds the other half of the treasure map. That night, they try to piece it together without success. Bernard gets frustrated and leaves, but in a stroke of luck, Pancho spills whiskey on the map, revealing the secret location. The joy is short-lived. The army arrives, arrests Pancho, and steals the map. Feeling guilty, Diego and Bernard transform into Zorro and Little Zorro to rescue their friend. They free him and head to the location, a cave filled with booby traps. Pancho and Little Zorro get separated from Zorro and find the treasure room dominated by a giant statue of Captain Kidd. The problem? The army is already there and captures the boy. Zorro arrives just in time to save the day. While he fights the soldiers, Pancho tries to pry an emerald from the statue's eye. He succeeds, throwing the gem at one of the villains and saving Zorro's life, but the action causes the entire statue to crumble. When the dust settles behind a waterfall, the real treasure is revealed. Captain Kidd's original pirate ship. A radiant Pancho climbs aboard and sails toward the horizon, finally living his dream. Lolita is overjoyed one beautiful morning, awaiting a visit from her cousin, Lasau, who is coming from Spain. But there's a catch. Lasau is a widow, and after losing her husband Kelly, she's in a never falling in love again phase. Because of this, Lolita asks Diego to tone down his flirtations.
Just keep quiet.
Yes, ma'am.
Meanwhile, at the port, the worthless Lieutenant Gabriel lays eyes on LaSalle and, more importantly, on her wedding ring, the famous Blue Eye, a priceless sapphire. The officer's greed gets the best of him, and he hatches a plan: marry the widow, just to get his hands on the jewel. But he's not the only one after the money. 3 very suspicious nuns, who are actually ninja assassins with swords, also want the ring and are already lying in wait. They even attempt an attack, but Diego shows up to spoil their fun and sends them running. Later, Gabriel stages a scene with some thugs to play the hero and save LaSalle, and it actually works. She is completely smitten. Luckily, Bernard, who is no fool, catches Gabriel paying off the bandits and tells Diego everything. Now they know the officer's plan: steal the Blue Eye and leave the poor woman heartbroken. To try and warn her, the boys come up with a Scooby-Doo worthy idea: create a ghost of Kelly, with Diego playing the leading role. Gabriel's plan moves forward at full speed. He invites LaSalle to dinner and, in a romantic moment, swaps the real ring for a cheap glass copy. Suddenly, the ninja nuns storm the place. Gabriel, feigning desperation, throws the fake ring out the window, abandons LaSalle, and flees with the real Blue Eye. The assassins realize the deception and turn back on LaSalle, but fortunately, Zorro appears to save the day. He defeats the villains, chases down Gabriel, recovers the ring, and has Sergeant Gonzalez arrest everyone. In the end, as LaSalle puts the ring back on, the real ghost of Kelly appears to give her a boost.
I want you to find true love again. And to be happy for the rest of your life.
The night ends on a high emotional note, but not every night is like this. On another evening, a strange moaning sound coming from the mountain is scaring everyone in Santasco, especially the children. Among them are Sino, who's a total scaredy cat, Bernard, who acts brave but is also shaking in his boots, and Casas, the oldest and the bully of the group, who constantly teases the others. Casas challenges his friends to a ghost hunt on the mountain. Meanwhile, the town is in chaos due to a flood of counterfeit coins in circulation. Diego, who's smarter than everyone combined, connects the dots. The noise on the mountain and the fake coin started around the same time. Coincidence? He thinks not. He decides to investigate. The boys arrive at an abandoned mine and discover the ghost is just steam escaping from some pipes. But the adventure doesn't end there. They find a secret tunnel leading to an underground counterfeit coin factory, and the boss is none other than Lieutenant Bucanello, who's bitter about being passed over for a promotion and decided to get rich before returning to Spain. The kids make noise and get caught. Bucanello's plan to throw all three into a vat of molten steel. Luckily, Tackle, Diego's little dog, escapes and runs to get his owner. Diego becomes Zorro and rushes to the scene. He saves the group but has to face a horde of henchmen and Bucanello, who fights with a giant boomerang. Yes, a boomerang. In the midst of the chaos, Sino, the one who is terrified, saves Casas's skin. How the tables have turned. It's Sino himself who has a brilliant idea. He points out the villain's weak spot, the vat of molten steel. They manage to sabotage the machinery, the hot metal spills out, and the entire cave collapses. Zorro saves the boys just in time, and Casas finally admits that he was scared too, strengthening the trio's friendship. Bernard is playing with his friends when he accidentally hits a stray bulldog. He feels sorry for it, takes care of the dog, names him Figaro, and the two become best friends.
It's you! You like the name Figaro?
Okay, he seems happy with that.
The problem is that Maria, the Vegas housekeeper, says there's no money for another animal. To make matters worse, Figaro makes a huge mess, and a heartbroken Bernard has to abandon his new friend in the forest. Meanwhile, a gang led by Lydia attacks a carriage of nobles, including Countess Mendoza. They steal everything, even their clothes, and impersonate them to stay at the Vegas house. There, the fake nobles overhear Commander Raymond and Gabriel plotting to steal the Countess's necklace, frame Don Alejandro, and arrest him. Lydia, who is smarter, plays along. She swaps the real necklace for a crystal from the chandelier. Gabriel finds the fake necklace in Alejandro's room and he is wrongfully arrested. Then, Lydia smashes the fake jewel in front of everyone and yells, "It's a fake," causing total chaos. But who shows up to save the day? Figaro. He returns home carrying a lost earring from the real Countess. And that's not all. He leads Bernard to the cabin where the real nobles are tied up. Bernard returns with the original Countess just as the bandits are about to flee. The jig is up. Zorro appears, defeats the gang, and reveals where Lydia hid the real necklace. The bandit, with nowhere to run, gives up Raymond's plan to frame Alejandro. The real Countess demands that Don Alejandro be released, and that the commander never mess with the Vega family again. Zorro makes a point of saying that the true hero of the story was Figaro. With that, the family decides to adopt the dog, much to Bernard's delight. Bernard is sick and tired of being treated like a kid by the adults, and is constantly trying to do grown-up chores, like chopping wood. But he always fails. The only task Maria entrusts him with is the shopping, which leaves him bored and irritated. One day, he runs into Lolita, who is on her way to the Vasquez house to look after their daughter Nikita, who happens to be Bernard's crush. The girl's parents have asked Lolita to babysit, as they are traveling and won't be back until the next day. Nikita invites Bernard to stay too, but he has to go do the shopping.
Bernard's gonna stay with us as well, aren't you, Bernard?
No, I'm sorry, I can't. I've got to go shopping, but thanks for asking. Bye now.
On his way, he sees a crowd gathered around a wanted poster that Sergeant Gonzalez is putting up. It features 3 extremely dangerous thieves. When Bernard sees the reward, he gets super excited and decides he's going to capture them. Gonzalez, of course, mocks him, saying he's just a kid. Bernard doesn't let it slide, knees him in the gut, and runs off. Soon after, he overhears a conversation and realizes it's the same 3 thieves from the poster. And worse, they're planning to rob Nikita's house, knowing she's alone with Lolita. Bernard considers telling Diego, but at the last minute, he changes his mind. He decides he's going to be the hero and capture the bad guys himself, in true Home Alone style. Figaro, his dog, obviously disagrees. Filled with determination, he follows the thieves but is discovered. They nearly finish the kid off for good, but their leader decides to just give him a scare. Figaro barks for help, and the men flee. After recovering and finishing the shopping, Bernard grabs an old sword and heads to Nikita's house, ready to protect her. Diego finds out about Bernard's crazy plan from Lolita and instantly knows he's up to something, so he decides to keep an eye on him. Zorro mode activated. Bernard turns the house into a battlefield, setting up a series of traps. That night, the thieves arrive, arrive. The two henchmen enter first and get a beating with a frying pan from Bernard. The leader, Sergio, breaks in through the front and comes face to face with Zorro. The fight gets serious. The henchmen corner Bernard and threaten the girls. Zorro defeats Sergio and tells Figaro to lend a hand. The bulldog grabs a candle and sets one of the bandits' clothes on fire, forcing him to let Nikita go. In the chaos, Bernard knocks one out, and Lolita takes down the other. Everyone is safe. The bandits are tied up in the cellar, awaiting the army. In the end, it was quite an experience for Bernard. He was brave, but he learned he can't play the hero all by himself just yet. It's the weekend, and Diego, along with Bernard and Lolita, heads to the neighboring town of Pueblo Naranja to handle some family business. But the trip takes a turn for the worse when they discover that the Red Wolves gang has robbed a bank and is hiding out in the area. The authorities order everyone to evacuate the town, but they run into a problem. The stagecoach driver is a total cheapskate and refuses to let Figaro on board. To allow the dog to travel, he demands 5 times the regular ticket price. Diego pays, and Lolita is furious. Inside the stagecoach, the cast of characters is varied. A wealthy lady named Letitia, and her sensitive son, Satopi, Dr. Domes, who is drowning his sorrows in alcohol after a medical error, and Jekyll, a mysterious man from Spain. At the last minute, Sergeant Gonzalez also boards. Along the way, the Red Wolves appear. Gonzalez reveals that his mission was to protect Satopi, who was to be kidnapped for ransom. The problem is, Gonzalez is alone against an entire gang. Then comes the plot twist. The driver's assistant, Doug, is one of the Red Wolves. He shoves his boss out, knocks out Gonzalez, and sabotages the stagecoach wheel. But just when all seems lost, another plot twist emerges. The mysterious Jekyll draws a sword and dispatches the traitor. He is, in fact, a captain of the Spanish army. Jekyll takes command and orders Diego and Bernard to hide the stagecoach in the forest, but the chaos only escalates. The boy, Satopi, runs off into the woods. His mother twists her ankle trying to chase him, and the sabotaged wheel finally breaks. Bernard runs to protect the boy. Jekyll confronts the bandits, but is forced to surrender when they capture Satopi. Bernard shows up and, in a brilliant or crazy move, claims that he is Satopi, creating total confusion. The bandits take both boys, but Bernard leaves a message behind. He sends Figaro to reveal the location of their hideout. Zorro springs into action. The ransom exchange goes down on a wooden bridge. When the bandits grab the money and try to escape with the hostages, Zorro appears. With a little help from Bernard and Satopi, he defeats the gang leaders. Jekyll arrives and comes face to face with the masked man. He's heard of Zorro and realizes his new post in California is going to be quite eventful. The town of Santasco is abuzz with celebration. It's the day of the annual Governor's Festival, an event featuring fireworks and 2 main competitions, a dance contest and a fencing tournament. Lolita finds herself roped into entering the dance competition, taking the place of her friend who has fallen ill. Meanwhile, a cocky Lieutenant Gabriel is certain that victory in the fencing tournament will be his. The festivities are interrupted by Captain Jekyll, who announces that a dangerous gang, the Scorpions, is wreaking havoc at the harbor. But Gabriel, more concerned with the party, dismisses the threat, stating the army has no time for such matters. An indignant Jekyll decides to pursue the outlaws on his own. Then, Gonzalez drops a bombshell. The winners of the dance contest and the fencing tournament must share a kiss at the finale. Lolita panics. If she wins, and Gabriel does too, it means another unwanted marriage proposal and a world of trouble. Diego faces a dilemma: help Captain Jekyll as Zorro or stop Gabriel from kissing Lolita. He learns that Jekyll has gone to the Scorpions' hideout alone and knows he must intervene. The scene crosscuts. On one side, Jekyll is taking a beating from the outlaws until Zorro arrives in the nick of time to save the day, fighting alongside him.
You're pretty good, Jekyll.
You too, Zorro.
On the other, back at the festival, Lolita dazzles on the dance floor and is announced as the winner. Zorro and Jekyll defeat the Scorpions, and now the masked hero must race against time to get back to the festival. He arrives just as Gabriel, the victor of the fencing tournament, is about to claim his kiss from Lolita. Zorro challenges Gabriel to a duel. The soldiers, of course, fight dirty, trying to cheat by using a mirror to blind Zorro with the sun's glare. But even this trick fails. Zorro turns the tables, defeats Gabriel, and finally claims the grand prize. eyes. A passionate kiss from Lolita, who surrenders herself completely to the moment. After the kiss, Zorro makes his spectacular escape, leaving the soldiers firing wildly into the air. It was an unforgettable moment for Lolita, who still has no idea of the true identity of the man behind the mask. At the Vega mansion, Maria is fetching water when a group of strangers arrives, asking for some for themselves and their horses. Don Alejandro, ever curious, asks where they're headed. The leader says their destination is Cuega Pass, a place with virtually nothing in it. The vague answer makes Don Alejandro suspicious. Just then, Diego arrives with his dog, Tackle, and sees the men speeding by. He notices a familiar brand on one of the horses, a scorpion. Wait, the Scorpion Gang again? Didn't Zorro finish them off? It seems he only took care of a small fraction of the gang. Diego and his brother Bernard put 2 and 2 together. The bandits are heading to Cuega Pass to use the village as a base to ambush a secret shipment arriving at the port. And what is this shipment? A legendary Japanese sword, a gift for the governor, rumored to be able to cut through steel, a video game level item. Zorro and Little Zorro arrive at the village to find it overrun and the people taken hostage. Sergeant Gonzalez and his soldiers also show up, walking right into the trap. Zorro rushes to warn Gonzalez about the ambush, and for a miracle, the sergeant listens. They speed through the Scorpion's gunfire. The plan was to distract the bandits so Little Zorro could free the hostages, but one family gets left behind. The Scorpions use the family to make Zorro surrender, and he gives himself up. The leader demands the sword in exchange for the family. Meanwhile, Gonzalez returns to the garrison, but Commander Raymond hushes up the incident to avoid looking bad in front of the governor, who is gleefully receiving his gift. With the army sitting on its hands, Zorro decides to act. He breaks into the governor's room, takes the sword, and leaves his Z mark as a calling card. Back in the village, he makes the exchange, but the leader is a scoundrel. He takes the sword and tries to kill the unarmed Zorro, but Little Zorro, the dogs, and the townspeople join the fight. In the final battle, the super Japanese sword shatters against Zorro's. The reason? It was made of bamboo.
Hey, what the hell happened?
The governor is furious about the fake, and Zorro rubs it in Raymond's face that he's a coward. In the end, guess who gets the blame? Sergeant Gonzalez, of course. This time, the trouble starts with a dog war. Figaro, Bernard's dog, is jealous of Tackle, Diego's dog, and is constantly trying to frame him. The housekeeper, Maria, falls for it and threatens to kick Tackle out. To prove the dog is good, Diego and Bernard take him hunting, but Tackle has a run of bad luck. He bumps into an army patrol and Lieutenant Gabriel nearly kills him. Don Alejandro has to pay a hefty sum to calm things down. The strange thing is, Tackle won't stop growling at the soldier's wagon, as if sensing something. When Maria finds out what happened, she freaks out and kicks Tackle out for good. Shortly after, Lolita arrives with bombshell news. A farmer has been arrested for helping a wounded rebel, and both are set to be executed. That night, Zorro appears to attempt a rescue, but Gabriel has a surprise. Hunting dogs. Since Zorro wears black, the dogs attack him mercilessly, leaving him gravely injured. He manages to escape, but the dogs got a piece of his cape and now have his scent. The army follows the trail to the Vega house. Though exhausted, Diego puts on the suit again to draw the soldiers away. He uses a scarecrow as a decoy, but one of the dogs stays on his tail. Lolita and Bernard try to help Zorro, but the dog corners them. When all seems lost, who appears to save the day? Tackle, the exiled dog, fights off the army dog, giving them the chance they need to escape. Filled with regret, Figaro apologizes to Tackle, and the two become friends. Together, they have a brilliant idea. They use pepper to mess with the hunting dog's sense of smell. With their pursuers out of commission, Zorro recovers and launches a counterattack. He and Little Zorro dress Lieutenant Gabriel in Zorro's old uniform and set the dogs on him, who then start chasing their own lieutenant. With the path clear, Zorro frees the prisoners. In the end, Tackle is welcomed back as a hero, proving that every dog has its day. The town of Santasco is celebrating the return of La Paz, a school friend of Diego's. The thing is, this friend has a shady past full of gambling debts and asks Diego to keep his secret. The party is going well until La Paz's father, Don Jose, is found seriously injured. Sergeant Gonzalez, who was passed out next to him, becomes the prime suspect and is arrested. Gonzalez swears he was attacked from behind. Soon, the army shifts its focus and arrests La Paz. The reason? He had argued with his father about money before the party and panicked when the soldiers arrived. For the army, it's case closed. But Diego, acting like a true detective, thinks the story doesn't add up. He sees some debt collectors in town and notices that the rock used to attack Gonzalez was too big for La Paz to lift. He decides to investigate on his own as his masked alter ego. Zorro and his dog Tackle break into the collector's hotel room and find crucial evidence, a blood-stained shirt and a forged contract. Next, Zorro frees La Paz from prison and leads the army and the entire town to the crime scene, promising to reveal the truth. There, he begins his Sherlock Holmes-esque performance. First, he asks La Paz to lift the murder weapon. The young man can't, innocent. Then, he shows the bloody shirt, which is a perfect fit for the debt collectors. To wrap it up, Zorro reads the forged contract, which shows the collectors plan to steal all the family's land. Don Jose, now recovered, confirms it. They were the ones who attacked him. The plan was to frame La Paz, see him executed, and take the property. Exposed, the bandits try to fight back, but are defeated by Zorro with help from La Paz and Gonzalez themselves. As thanks, La Paz's parents ensure Zorro makes a safe getaway. In the end, La Paz apologizes to his father and promises to change his ways, proving it's never too late to right one's wrongs. Gabriel is once again obsessed with catching Zorro, and to do so, hires 2 inventors to build one of those horror movie houses, full of deadly traps. It's like a lethal version of Home Alone. One brother put up the money, and the other, Sykes, the mad genius, designed it all. Raymond sends Lieutenant Gabriel and Sergeant Gonzalez to inspect the contraption. At first, they're not impressed, but when the traps are activated, even Gabriel is left jaw-dropped. The inventors test it on a Zorro dummy, and the officers already consider the hero a goner. Meanwhile, in another mess, Don Carlos has lost all his friends' money in a bad investment and is now being hunted by the entire town. Diego and Bernard are tasked with rescuing the poor guy. They find him hiding in the woods and stuff him into a wagon full of manure to throw off the pursuers. The reunion with his wife is hilarious. She runs to hug him, but the smell makes her recoil instantly.
Oh, Carlos!
Katarina, yeah!
Carlos!
Oh!
Ooh, you stink!
Carlos explains he fell for a scam. A stranger sold him on the idea of buying purebred horses, took everyone's money, and disappeared. Guess who the scammer was? Warner, one of the inventors of the crazy house. Bernard, without a second thought, goes to the brother's house to get the money back and, of course, walks right into the traps. To make matters worse, the villains use little Zorro as bait to lure the real Zorro. The hero appears, saves his young partner, and the two begin to navigate the house of death. Sykes, the unhinged brother, gets angry that Zorro won't die and decides to blow everything up, much to the despair of his brother who invested a fortune in it. The house goes up in flames, but when the smoke clears, Zorro and little Zorro emerge from inside a safe, completely unharmed. They recover the money, return it to Don Carlos, and even leave a little parting gift for the crazy brothers. The kids are playing Zorro and soldiers when a new boy, Farino, shows up looking for a fight with Bernard. The reason? Farino hates Zorro with a passion because his father, a former sergeant, was fired for failing to capture the hero. The squabble gets so out of hand that they end up destroying an orange stand and have to make a run for it. Bernard tries to explain that Zorro is a good guy and the army is corrupt, but Farino is holding a serious grudge and refuses to listen. The situation escalates when Lieutenant Gabriel arrives. Seeing the boy's hatred, the manipulative officer makes him a deal. If Farino defeats Zorro, he'll rehire his father. It's obviously a trap, but the boy takes the bait and starts building a snare. Meanwhile, Farino's father is badly injured while prospecting for gold. To help his family, Farino takes over the work and, by a stroke of luck, finds a giant gold nugget. The news spreads, and, of course, Gabriel decides to confiscate the nugget as a tax. Just as Gabriel is about to take the gold, Zorro and little Zorro appear to stop the theft. A fight breaks out, and Farino is shocked to see the man he despises most fighting to protect his family. Cornered, Gabriel yells at Farino to use the trap on Zorro. It's the moment of truth. Farino finally understands who the real villain is and springs the trap on the soldiers. Zorro defeats Gabriel and returns the nugget.
Farino!
Farino, in tears, apologizes to the hero. With the money from selling the gold, his family can afford his father's treatment and move away to start a new life. Farino, who once hated Zorro, is now his #1 fan. Leona, a devout friend of Bernard's, has a dream: to fly. He builds a makeshift hang glider and heads to a cliff to test it, with all the kids watching. The first attempt is a total disaster. He loses control, fails to gain speed, and ends up crashing near a cabin. But this wasn't just any cabin. Inside, 2 bandits were plotting a pirate attack on a ship. Amidst the chaos of the crash, a note detailing their plan gets stuck on Leona's hang glider. The thugs argue with the boy and kick him out. Later, the bandits attack Leona's father, the blacksmith Rondo, to intimidate the boy. Leona finds the note and is terrified. To make matters worse, he discovers that Lolita and Maria, the Vega's housekeeper, are on the very ship that's being targeted. Diego and Bernard try to warn the army, but Gabriel, as usual, couldn't care less. The situation seems hopeless until Zorro comes up with an idea straight out of an action movie. Use Leona's hang glider to reach the ship on the open sea. With a running start from his horse, Viento, Zorro, and Leona take off from the cliff. Leona finally achieves his dream of flying. They reach the ship, and Zorro begins fighting the pirates. But the leader, a man named Mr. John, is a tough opponent and nearly defeats Zorro. Salvation comes from the sky. Leona, in a completely uncontrolled landing, slams right into the villain and saves the day. Leona not only fulfilled his and his late mother's dream, but also became the story's unlikely hero. Here we get to know more about Pedro Gonzalez, the unluckiest man in the universe. He comes from a poor family and joined the army, but his life hasn't improved much. He's been a sergeant for nearly 20 years and continues to be the punching bag for his superiors, especially Lieutenant Gabriel. The only perk is that the army pays for his food and clothes, and Gonzalez loves to eat and drink. He dreams of getting a promotion to make his mother proud, but everyone just makes fun of him. One night after getting drunk at a bar, he sees a thief breaking into a house. Instead of calling for help, he thinks, "This is my chance to be a hero," and climbs through the window himself. But he makes so much noise that the thief escapes, and the homeowner, Mistress Delcia, comes face to face with Gonzalez and assumes he's the burglar. To make matters worse, the real thief sneaks up from behind and knocks our sergeant out cold.
Now which way did he go? I didn't see where he went. He moved so quick.
The next day, the robbery is all anyone in Santasco can talk about. Mistress Delcia's most valuable jewel is missing, and Gonzalez is the prime suspect. A reward is offered, 100 gold coins for the jewel and only 50 for Gonzalez. It's almost an insult. Now everyone in town is out to hunt down the sergeant. He hides out at Diego and Bernard's house, but his love for a warm pie gives away his location. Being good friends, the brothers decide to help him find the real thief. Lolita joins the team too. The plan? To follow the town's only fence, a man named Brown. They disguise Gonzalez in Maria's clothes, who's plump like him, how convenient, and spring into action. Diego and Bernard become their alter egos, but the mission goes sideways, and Brown captures Gonzalez and Lolita. However, the guard dogs, Tackle and Figaro, are smarter than most people and lead Zorro and Little Zorro to the rescue. After a fight with Lieutenant Gabriel, they finally corner Brown and the real thief. Gonzalez makes the arrest, but gets no credit because Zorro did all the work. At least he understands that while he may be a soldier, the true hero is Zorro. Diego's morning starts with a bombshell. Elena, a friend from Spain, shows up at his door claiming she's come to marry him. Diego panics, completely bewildered. Her friend Annabelle explains the story. When Diego was sick with a high fever in Spain, he deliriously proposed to her. Diego has no memory of this. The drama escalates when Lolita arrives and Annabelle realizes he already has a girlfriend. But wait, there's a plot twist. The marriage story is a complete sham. Elena and Annabelle cooked up the whole thing to extort money from the wealthy Vega family. The real motivation is Jose, Elena's true love, who is broke. They need the cash to be together. A message delivered by a small bird convinces Elena to stick with the plan. What they didn't count on was Annabelle overhearing Sergeant Gonzalez talking about a secret money transport. She tips off Jose, who tries to rob the carriage. But Zorro appears, thwarts the robbery, and notices Jose's messenger bird connecting the dots. Diego, already suspicious, sends Little Zorro to investigate, and they find letters that prove the entire scheme. With evidence in hand, Zorro devises a brilliant counterplan. He has Lolita forge new letters, setting a perfect trap. They arrange a fake money transport, and Jose and his gang fall for it hook, line, and sinker. Zorro defeats them, and Elena, finally seeing she was used, is furious and orders Gonzalez to arrest her ex-love and his sister. In the end, filled with regret, she asks for Diego's forgiveness, which he gives, understanding that she was a victim too. As she departs from the port, Elena gives Diego a thank you kiss, and the camera zooms in on Lolita's jealous face. I predict more drama. Sometime later, we meet a young man named Fernando. Fernando, who is spying on soldiers as they stockpile wheat. He's discovered, killed, and thrown off a cliff. His little dog Fifi barely escapes, injured, and is later found by Diego and Bernard. Meanwhile, the town is preparing for a party to honor a businessman named Diaz, a supposed philanthropist. Diego, as usual, doesn't want to go, but gets dragged along. At the party, they meet Isabella, Fernando's wife, who receives the news of her husband's death and is devastated. Lolita takes her in. Things get strange when Diego spots a mysterious horse bearing the crest of the Spanish royal family. Isabella then reveals the truth. She and Fernando weren't married. They were secret agents. Their mission was to investigate Diaz, who is actually a crook stealing wheat from the poor with the help of Commander Raymond. Isabella, now on her own, ignores Diego's warnings and follows Diaz to a secret warehouse. She overhears him confessing his plan but is discovered and captured. Who comes to the rescue? Figaro, who saves both Isabella and Fifi. The dogs run to get help. Bernard becomes little Zorro and goes after them. Lolita alerts Diego, who transforms into Zorro. After a fight worthy of an action movie, Zorro saves everyone. They rush back to the plaza where Diaz is giving a speech. Isabella reveals herself as an agent and presents an arrest warrant. Commander Raymond, seeing his scheme is about to collapse, comes up with a terrible idea. He kills Diaz in front of everyone, blames him for everything, and plays the hero for recovering the wheat. Raymond gets away with it again, leaving Zorro enraged. Zorro swears his time will come. Isabella and Fifi return to Spain. With a heart-wrenching goodbye between Fifi and her new hero, Figaro, a circus has just arrived in Santasco, run by a man named Black, a seemingly trustworthy ex-military officer. So trustworthy, in fact, that our old acquaintances Commander Raymond and Lieutenant Gabriel have invested money in his business. The plan is simple. Black possesses an amulet with supernatural powers and intends to use it to eliminate Zorro. The bait? Lolita, of course. Where she goes, Zorro is sure to follow. Meanwhile, we meet Popolo, a circus boy who is friends with Bernard. The problem is, Popolo is ashamed of his father Thomas, who is the clown. In an attempt to bring them together, Diego, Bernard, and Lolita invite the father and son to dinner at the Vega mansion. But the party is crashed by a man named Jose, who accuses Thomas of treason. 10 years ago, Thomas was supposed to lead a rebellion but disappeared, and everyone else was arrested. Popolo, who already disliked his father, now hates him. Later, Thomas opens up to Diego. He was late to the rebellion because he found an abandoned baby, Popolo himself. He chose to save the child and out of shame became a clown to hide his sorrow. The next day, the circus goes up in flames. Black hypnotizes Lolita with the amulet and hangs her above the stage. Popolo sees everything but is captured. Thomas arrives to save his son, and then comes the plot twist. Black reveals that not only did he not adopt Popolo, but it was he, Black, who betrayed the rebels for money. Just as he's about to kill the father and son, Zorro appears. However, the amulet is too powerful, and even Zorro becomes a puppet. In a heroic act, Thomas the Clown shoots an arrow at Black, breaking the spell. Zorro recovers the amulet, destroys it, frees Lolita, and leaves his Z mark on the villain.
This is what I think of your pendant. Hi-ya!
In the end, Jose forgives Thomas, and Popolo, even knowing he was adopted, embraces Thomas and calls him father. We need Pepita, a little girl who's always making up stories, which has left her friendless and bullied. To make matters worse, her family has gone bankrupt, and she now sells flowers on the street to help her mother. Nobody buys from her because they think she's a liar. One day, a kind old man named Aiden buys a flower. Learning of her situation, he offers to find a job for Pepita's mother. The joy is short-lived. Pepita overhears Aiden arguing with a sinister man named Gorilla. Aiden refuses to sell his business, and shortly after, his mine explodes. He goes bankrupt and has to leave town. Pepita saw Gorilla's henchman and knows it was no accident, but when she tries to tell Sergeant Gonzalez, he dismisses her and sarcastically tells her to tell her story to Zorro. The only person who believes her is Bernard, but Gorilla's men start chasing Pepita, and Bernard has to save her. He takes her to the Vega mansion, but Diego isn't there. They discover there's a fancy party at the headquarters of the South Indian Trading Company, SITC, Gorilla's company. With Maria's help, they sneak into the party hidden under her dress. At the party, Diego reveals to Bernard that he already knew everything. The SITC is sabotaging mines to force owners to sell, creating a monopoly. Meanwhile, Gorilla lures Pepita into a trap. She and Bernard are kidnapped and taken to another mine, which is also set to be blown up. But the little dog, Figaro, follows their trail. Diego, sensing the danger, becomes Zorro, rushes to the mine, frees the children, and stops the explosion just in time. Zorro hands the saboteurs over to the mine's owner, who decides to sue the SITC, but it's of little use. The company's big boss, Capital, pays off Commander Raymond to cover up the case, forging a new and dangerous alliance. Lady Barbara, the wife of the governor of California, is fed up with life in America and wants to return to Spain. Commander Raymond, ever helpful, even arranges a farewell gift for her, a box of jewels that were actually confiscated from the residents of Santasco. Diego and Bernard, spying on the conversation, are discovered, and Gabriel ends up wounding Diego's arm with his sword. The Zorro duo's plan is to ambush Lady Barbara's carriage to recover the jewels, but the plan goes wrong when another, much stronger group of bandits attacks first. They defeat the soldiers and nearly blow up a bridge. Zorro appears, saving Barbara and the jewels, but because of his injured arm, he can barely fight off Gabriel and has to be saved by his horse, Viento. During the chaos, Barbara takes a liking to Bernard, without his mask. Upon learning he's an orphan, she decides to adopt him and take him to Spain. Bernard is torn, the chance to have a mother versus his loyalty to Diego and his life as little Zorro. The next day, already on the ship to Spain, the bandits attack again. They've taken the crew hostage and are ready for the final heist. But Zorro, disguised as an old man, was already on board. The fight is tough due to his injury, but then Lady Barbara goes into hero mode. She throws the jewel box at the bandit leader's head to save Zorro, and even kicks the man off the ship. Bernard takes care of the rest of the gang. In the end, little Zorro explains to Barbara why the jewels must be returned. She understands, lets him go, and even lies to Gabriel, claiming she gave the jewels to Zorro as a thank you. A fitting end for a tough lady. In another adventure, Bernard and his friends stumble upon some ancient ruins that seemingly appeared out of nowhere near Santasco. The whole thing gets even weirder when they see a girl dancing atop a pyramid, like a scene from a movie. They rush back to town, excitedly telling everyone about their discovery. Maria then shares the local legend, the story of Princess Estrella of the Massa Kingdom, who died of a broken heart after her father, the king, exiled her true love. After her death, an earthquake destroyed everything, and the kingdom vanished. Inspired by the story, Diego and Bernard head to the ruins, but their peace is shattered by the sound of pickaxes. And who's there? Don Carlos, who bought the land for cheap and is now digging for the lost gold of Massa. During the excavation, they find a stone tablet with bizarre inscriptions. Suddenly, the mysterious dancer appears with her grandfather, Moises, and her name is Estrella. She claims the land is hers and tells everyone to leave. Moises explains that she is the last descendant of the kingdom and the only one who can read the tablet. She reads a passage pointing to a treasure, but the rest is worn away. Don Carlos wastes no time, grabs the tablet, and finds a golden mask and bracelet. The news spreads, and the entire town is gripped by gold fever. But there's a plot twist. Grandpa Moises is a con artist. He's been bearing replica tablets to trip people and get rich. Commander Raymond steps in to end the charade, arresting Moises and Estrella and confiscating everything. But Moises manages to escape, leaving his granddaughter behind. As bait, Raymond announces he will send Estrella to Peros, a sinister prison island. This is the cue for Zorro and little Zorro to spring into action. They infiltrate the fortress, rescue Estrella, and on their way out, blow up the military camp in true action movie style.
Let's go, Zorro!
In the end, the town forgets about the gold, the land is returned to Estrella, and the legend remains a mystery. The South Indian Trading Company, that megacorporation, opens an art gallery filled with famous works, including the Mona Lisa. Diego and Lolita, of course, go to check it out. Right away, Diego, who has a knack for sniffing out trouble, smells fresh paint, but Lolita dismisses it as varnish. The manager, Don Petro, announces that the artworks are for sale at any price. Lolita falls in love with a Goya painting, and the manager offers it for half price. A suspiciously good deal. Meanwhile, Bernard is playing the hero and saves an old man, Rodrigo, who is being chased by some thugs. The old man says he's looking for a girl named Sylvia. Later, Diego and Bernard see a wanted poster with Rodrigo's face, accusing him of stealing the artworks from the gallery. They find Sylvia and learn the truth. Rodrigo is a painter being forced by the SITC to create forgeries to pay off an absurd debt. The company is basically a high-end loan shark. To make matters worse, SITC thugs thugs, led by Captain Ponzaro, break into the house and take Rodrigo and his granddaughter hostage. Diego and Bernard return to the gallery and confirm their suspicions. The paint on the canvases is still wet. The artworks are all fakes. They tell Lolita and her father, who go to confront the manager, but Don Petro bribes them with a piece of Chinese porcelain to keep them quiet. So much for diplomacy. Zorro and Little Zorro follow Ponzaro to the hideout. The villain is about to kill Rodrigo, but Zorro crashes the party. In an awesome fight, Zorro disarms Ponzaro and pins him to the wall with the old man's own painting knives. Poetic, isn't it? With the villains defeated, Rodrigo decides to expose the fraud. Zorro and Little Zorro leave a Z on each fake painting, turning the art gallery into a crime scene. Ponzaro confesses everything, which leads to Don Petro's arrest. Rodrigo and Sylvia are finally free to return to Spain. Sergeant Gonzalez is on his day off, but the peace doesn't last long. He sees a flower girl, Sela, being attacked by two thugs and rushes in without a second thought. He takes a beating, but manages to scare them off. Sela tends to his wounds, and Gonzalez falls in love instantly. She tells him the men work for Teodor, a loan shark who turned a 10 gold coin loan from her deceased boyfriend, Lamont, into 80. The problem is, Sela hates the army, so Gonzalez lies through his teeth and says he's not a soldier. He becomes her secret bodyguard, even using a bedsheet as a disguise to protect her. But the story turns into a soap opera. Plot twist number 1. The supposedly dead boyfriend, Lamont, is alive and working for the loan shark. He knocks Gonzalez out and kidnaps Sela. Plot twist number 2. Sela's ring is the key to $1 million inheritance. She's the granddaughter of an English duke, and Teodor wants to steal it all for his spoiled daughter Dora, who is obsessed with Lamont. Gonzalez recovers and, driven by the power of love and rage, storms the loan shark's lair. He confronts a masked henchman, and during the fight, the mask falls off, revealing Lamont. Awkward, Gonzalez helps the two escape. Meanwhile, Zorro and Little Zorro take care of the big boss. They destroy Teodor's fraudulent contracts and lead their famous Z mark on the villain. Gonzalez, like a true lion, defeats the remaining henchmen and clears a path for Sela and Lamont to escape to England. Sela finds out he's a soldier, but forgives him. Teodor and his men are arrested, but a new problem arises for the sergeant. Dora, the loan shark's daughter, is now in love with him. The episode ends with Gonzalez desperately fleeing from his new admirer, proving that love can be far more complicated than catching criminals. Don Alejandro, Diego, and Bernard are casually working in the fields when they suddenly spot a massive cloud of smoke in the sky. They rush over to investigate and find a farmer's warehouse completely engulfed in flames. Amid the chaos, they find a note from a supposed social reform group threatening to burn everything down if the rich don't share their wealth. Shortly after, the SITC warehouse also goes up in flames, and the result is chaos. Food prices skyrocket, and no one can afford bread anymore. The next day, people are elbowing each other to buy what little bread is left, but they're limited to 1 loaf per person. This is where we meet Miguel, a boy who is hungrier than most. His father, Nicholas, has turned to drinking after losing his job in the fire. To help, the Vega family decides to use their own wheat supply to bake free bread for the town. Meanwhile, Nicholas gets a very shady job. Just stand in front of a warehouse holding a suitcase. Out of nowhere, a mysterious weapon is fired from a carriage, and the Vega's warehouse catches fire. To make matters worse, the suitcase explodes and Nicholas flees in a panic. Now, there's no more bread.
I am so terribly sorry. We have no bread left to give. It was all burned.
And the furious townspeople blame poor Miguel for the false promise. Diego, however, investigates and finds gunpowder in the suitcase, realizing Nicholas was set up. The crisis worsens, and Don Alejandro confronts SITC to lower their prices, but they refuse. Plan B is to buy back the wheat they sold to a ship that is about to set sail, but the president of SITC orders his accountant, Marcos, to take action. Nicholas ends up being arrested, accused of arson. Bernard, however, convinces Miguel to investigate with him. Nicholas manages to escape and ends up on the very ship carrying the wheat. There, he comes face to face with the men who hired him, and the truth comes out. The mastermind behind it all was Marcos, the SITC accountant. The social reform group was a sham created to cause a shortage and let SITC profit. Just as they are about to capture Bernard and Miguel, who have also made their way to the ship, Zorro appears. He already suspected everything and had laid a trap. In the fight, Nicholas redeems himself and helps Zorro defeat Marcos. Zorro praises his courage, and Nicholas finally makes peace with his son. Syth decides to play the hero and opens a public hospital. At the opening party, a local, heavy-drinking doctor named Timoteo shows up to cause a scene. He tears into the new doctors, calling them inexperienced rich kids who only care about their diplomas. The hospital's president, Bazante, is offended and has him thrown out. Later, Bazante tries to buy Timoteo's silence by offering him the vice president position, but the doctor humiliates him in front of the whole town. Furious, Bazante hatches a devilish plan to ruin Timoteo. He has a critically ill patient brought to Timoteo's clinic and, in secret, has one of his henchmen drug the salted water the doctor drinks to concentrate before surgery. Mid-procedure, Timoteo collapses. The patient dies, and he takes all the blame. His license is revoked, and he becomes a town outcast. One of the new doctors, Lucino, starts to suspect foul play when he sees the SITC hospital charging outrageous prices. He confronts Bazante, quits, and reveals that he saw the henchman tampering with Timoteo's drink. Diego and Bernard overhear everything and know Lucino is in danger. Zorro and Little Zorro appear just in time to save him from a fatal beating. Then comes the karmic plot twist. Bazante's own son has a serious accident and needs emergency surgery. With Lucino's hand injured by the henchman, there's only one option left: Timoteo. Zorro plays motivational coach and convinces the doctor, who is at his lowest point, to help. Against all odds, the surgery is a success. With his tail between his legs, Bazante confesses his crime. The SITC hospital is shut down, and Timoteo gets his clinic and his honor back. Lucino, inspired by the old doctor's integrity, decides to become his apprentice. Lolita and Diego are out for a walk when some thugs start to harass her. Diego, true to his cowardly persona, takes a beating without fighting back. Just then, an unexpected hero arrives. A charming man named Emilio, riding a white horse. He drives off the attackers, even carving a Z on one of their shirts with his sword, and charms Lolita, who immediately believes he is Zorro. Emilio takes advantage of the situation, hinting that he is indeed the masked hero, and even claims to be the son of a Spanish duke. Lolita falls head over heels for him and completely shuns Diego. Suspicious, Diego and Bernard follow Emilio and see him talking with the very same thugs from before, realizing it was all staged. Suddenly, the news breaks. Lolita has been kidnapped. Emilio shows up with a ransom note demanding 500 gold coins and, to add more pressure, announces that they were engaged. Lolita's father and Don Alejandro are desperate and gather the money. Diego, already aware of the scam, brilliantly suggests that the hero Emilio be the one to deliver the ransom. As expected, Zorro and Little Zorro follow the imposter and uncover the whole scheme: the fake kidnapping, the false noble title, the staged fight. It was all a plan by Emilio and his gang to steal the money. At the time of the exchange, the masked heroes spring into action. Zorro defeats the bandits and, to teach the imposter a lesson, carves a real Z on him as punishment for tarnishing his code of honor. After saving the day, Zorro tells Lolita to wait for the person who cares about her most. Moments later, Diego appears. Lolita, still upset about his cowardice, can't help but show her affection. She returns home telling everyone she was saved by Zorro, reaffirming to herself who has truly won her heart, even if he wears a mask and has many faces. The army is cracking down, rounding up people in Santasco's plaza and sending them to work in the mines. But Zorro, ever vigilant, follows the soldiers, defeats them all in a tough fight, and saves the townspeople. It turns out this whole operation was a plan by Capital, the head of the Indian trading company, to lure out Zorro. He hired a squad of bounty hunters from India, a team of elite, for-hire assassins, with a single mission: to wipe Zorro off the map. First on the list is Rondhir, an archer who's like an Indian Legolas. He sets an ambush for Zorro, but our hero, quick as ever, notices the glint of sunlight on his bow and dodges every arrow. Zorro then uses some classic trickery. He throws his cape over a tree stump to fool the hunter. Rondhir falls for the decoy, and when he goes to check on his victim, Zorro appears from behind and carves a Z into him. But just when Zorro thinks it's over, surprise! Another assassin appears, and it's not just anyone. It's Tio, Diego's old friend and fencing mentor. The fight is tense. Tio is clearly superior and leaves Zorro in pieces.
Tio is much better than I am. What shall I do?
But just as he's about to deliver the final blow, he looks into Zorro's eyes and figures it all out. He knows it's Diego. Before we can process what's happening, a third hunter, Tarsum, emerges to finish the job. But Tio, in a soap opera-worthy plot twist, stops him and lets Zorro escape. Later, Tio goes to Diego's house, and the truth comes out. He confesses that he became a mercenary for money after his family went broke and his parents died in poverty. The conversation heats up, and Tio challenges Diego to a final duel at dawn. The fight takes place in an old cemetery. Tio dominates again, but when it comes time to kill his friend, his better nature wins, and he lowers his sword. But Tarsem, who was lying in wait, seizes the opportunity and attacks. Tio throws himself in front of Zorro, taking the dart straight to the heart. With his last words, he gives Zorro a tip on how to beat the enemy. Zorro, filled with rage, finishes off Tarsem, but the victory is bittersweet. He has lost his mentor and friend forever. Santasco's Plaza has a new attraction, Amelia, a magician girl performing illusion tricks. Sergeant Gonzalez arrives to play inspector, but the charming Amelia plants a kiss on his cheek. The sergeant becomes flustered, like a teenager on a first date. Love is in the air. The trouble starts when Amelia's grandfather, Benito, disappears inside the town's new casino. To make matters worse, a robbery takes place there. And guess who the prime suspect is? The grandfather, of course. The casino owner, Dalden, wants to use Amelia as bait, but Diego devises a plan and helps the girl escape to Lolita's house. Meanwhile, Diego, Bernard, and a love-struck Gonzalez search for Benito. They find him injured, and he tells them the truth. Dalden is a criminal who wanted to force him to use his magic tricks to cheat customers. When he refused, Dalden's henchmen tried to kill him. The situation escalates when Dalden and his men storm Lolita's house to finish off Benito for good. But just in the nick of time, Zorro appears at the window, saves the day, and exposes Dalden in front of everyone, proving the grandfather's innocence. Inspired by Zorro, Gonzalez finally musters the courage, confesses his feelings, and asks Amelia to marry him. The grandfather even gives his blessing. A happy ending? Not quite. Amelia can't let her grandfather travel back to Spain alone and rushes to the ship. The farewell is sad, and she throws him her poker cards as a memento. In the end, Gonzalez is left there, heartbroken, waiting for the next unrequited love to come along. Look who's in town. McCrae, a college friend of Diego's who has become a writer. His mission? To write an authorized biography of Zorro, with the King of Spain's blessing and everything. The problem is, McCrae arrives thinking the army is full of good guys who will help with his research. Little does he know, the townspeople are already giving him the side eye, calling him the army's little dog. McCrae's wake-up call comes when he witnesses soldiers trying to capture a family whose father they had killed simply for defending freedom. It's the reality check he needed to see the army's true, corrupt face. He cuts ties with the military but continues his investigation on his own, and his suspicions begin to point in an unexpected direction, toward Diego himself. Things get serious when soldiers seize McCrae's notes and, based on them, arrest Diego. That's when the writer connects the dots and understands everything. It was Diego, acting as Zorro, who had been hiding and protecting the persecuted family all along. His conscience heavy for putting his friend in danger, McCrae teams up with little Zorro, our Bernard of course, to hatch an escape plan. The plan works, and Zorro manages to escape. McCrae, now an ally, decides to return to Spain, taking the family with him to ensure their safety. Before leaving, he makes a friend's promise. The book about Zorro will remain on the shelf. He will only write the story when the masked hero is no longer needed. A respectable end for a friend who finally understood which side he was on. We meet a group of teenagers who are huge fans of Zorro. They're so into the whole fighting for justice vibe that they decide to create their own vigilante fan club to take on the army. The problem is, a local troublemaker overhears them and decides to exploit the situation. He becomes a sort of evil mentor, giving the kids missions and encouraging everyone to pick up a sword. With this, the kids start getting cocky. They begin taking their fights too seriously, and what was meant to be justice turns into chaos. Seeing that things are spiraling out of control, Diego decides the best way to stop this Zorro fan club is to join it. It's the classic infiltrate the enemy's lair mission. Once inside, Diego immediately realizes the kids are being manipulated. Their so-called mentor is just using them for his own gain. So, like a good double agent, Diego works from the shadows. He steals back everything the group had plundered and then, without his mask, has a talk with the young vigilantes. He gives them a straight talk, explaining that there are other ways to fight for what's right without causing mayhem. Basically, a 19th century version of the "with great power comes great responsibility" speech. A new inventor arrives in town, and she's basically the Tony Stark of the colonial era. She shows up presenting two incredible creations, a mechanical knight knight named Max, think a C-3PO in armor, and a submarine. The second invention is more personal, a tribute to her late son, who was passionate about the ocean. But not everything is smooth sailing. During the night, Diego, who never sleeps, catches some men sabotaging the submarine. His suspicions are immediately raised, and he knows something bad is about to happen. The next day, Lolita and a bunch of kids win the golden ticket for the city's first ever underwater voyage. It all seems amazing, a true expedition to Atlantis. But, as predicted, the sabotage takes effect. The submarine begins to sink, and the dream trip turns into a disaster movie. The crew is forced to evacuate amidst the panic. To make matters worse, the episode becomes a crossover with Jaws. A school of sharks appears to attack the survivors, but Zorro emerges from the depths like Aquaman, fights off the creatures, saves Lolita, and to top it all off, unmasks the person responsible for the sabotage. The man is a hero, even underwater.
It was you who sabotaged the submarine, wasn't it?
What?
The storm season is approaching, and the townspeople band together to build a dam to prevent the river from overflowing. It's a true community effort, but in the middle of the construction, some menacing-looking debt collectors show up to threaten the project leader. The united townspeople protect the man and send the loan sharks packing. The problem is, one of these collectors is a professional swordsman hired specifically to put an end to Zorro, and the villain's plan is diabolical. They want to destroy the dam, let a partner company rebuild it at an outrageous price, steal the people's money, and capture Zorro in the process. The collectors return and manage to trap Zorro in a net in the middle of the rapidly rising river. The situation is tense. Lolita desperately tries to cut the net, but Zorro yells for her to flee. The reason? The villains release giant logs downstream, ready to destroy the dam and crush Zorro. In a plot twist, the army decides to help and starts firing cannons to destroy the logs. Zorro finally escapes and rushes into the fight. The final battle takes place in the middle of the storm. Just when all seemed lost, the opponent is struck by lightning, falling and disappearing into the river. The rain clears and Zorro rides off under the open sky, with the townspeople's heartfelt thanks. The South India Trading Company is back, and it's decided to monopolize the fruit market and drive prices up. It's like buying concert tickets from a scalper, but with apples and bananas. Meanwhile, we meet a female blacksmith with a very noble life goal, to make her late father proud, and her plan to achieve this? Becoming a Zorro cosplayer. Her idea is to test her swords in public by parading around as the masked hero. It's marketing in its boldest form. Of course, the real Zorro, Diego, hears about this case of identity theft. He comes up with a brilliant plan. In disguise, he approaches the female Zorro and gives her his own sword for maintenance. It's the ultimate test to see if she really knows her craft. She uses the sword, and it's confirmed. She's the imposter. But the plot thickens when the SITC attacks the family farm of Lolita, who, it seems, is our hero blacksmith. The two Zorros must team up to escape the henchmen. It's almost a Zorro-verse. After their escape, the original Zorro tries to recruit the woman for his private league of justice, but she refuses. Instead of becoming a full-time vigilante, she decides to focus on her career and become the best blacksmith in the region. A woman with priorities. We have to respect that. The trouble starts with Diego and Bernard being completely tactless, telling Lolita and her friends that their expensive perfume stinks. After that awkward moment, Lolita decides to return the product to the store, only to discover the truth. The perfume is a cheap knockoff, courtesy of the SITC. They've moved on from fruit to cosmetic piracy. The original shop owner is devastated, but Lolita isn't. She decides to play detective and catch the counterfeiters herself. But her plan goes a bit wrong, and she ends up trapped in the criminals' wagon, being taken directly to their base of operations, an all-female convent that's actually a front for a fake perfume factory. Basically, Breaking Bad with fake nuns. Diego and Bernard find out she's been captured and set off on a rescue mission with a movie-worthy plan, dressing up as women to infiltrate the convent. A fight breaks out, but Zorro freezes, as his code of honor prevents him from fighting women. That's when Lolita takes charge. She grabs a gun, not to kill, but to expose the nuns as disguised male criminals. With Zorro's moral dilemma solved, he can finally unleash the pain. After the action, there's a cinematic embrace between Zorro and Lolita, but a final villain appears just to leave a to-be-continued taste. In the end, the SITC is defeated, defeated, and the original perfumer's business thrives once more. Night falls, and we see a wealthy couple being mugged by a thief who uses magic to steal their jewelry, looking like a villain straight out of a video game. Gonzalez recounts the tale, and Diego drops a real gem. Women shouldn't be walking around with such expensive jewelry. Maria, of course, chews him out for his insensitivity. To prepare, Diego starts studying magic as if creating a character build to face a new boss. The problem is, he completely forgets he has a date with Lolita. She shows up all dressed up for the ball, only to find him with his nose buried in a book. On their way, they're attacked by the magic-wielding thief, and Diego's reaction? He rips the sleeve of Lolita's dress and simply bolts, leaving her behind. A true gentleman, Lolita is caught in a shadow trap, but Zorro appears to save the day. He frees her, grabs one of the magical knives as a clue, and vanishes before the army arrives, but not before complimenting Lolita on her beauty. The next day, Lolita finds Diego and gives him a piece of her mind for abandoning her. To apologize, he takes her to a seamstress, where they meet Hachisuka, a Japanese tailor who owes his life to General Raymond. Plot twist: Hachisuka is the ninja. He kidnaps Lolita to lure out Zorro. But Zorro, having done his homework, sees through the ninja tricks and corners the guy. Instead of an epic fight, they talk it out, and Hachisuka decides to return to Japan. A peaceful and unexpected ending. The trouble begins when a barn is completely flattened, as if a giant stepped on it. The only witness is panicking, talking about a monster. The army, led by Captain Jekyll, investigates and finds a giant handprint on the grass, leaving everyone stunned. Their commander, Raymond, decides to cover up the incident to avoid causing a panic, just like the mayor in Jaws. Secretly, however, Jekyll and a businessman named Mr. Brown follow a man named Gonzalez to a giant creature, a kind of albino King Kong named Sabu. Gonzalez explains he can control the beast with special red berries. But in a moment of carelessness, Sabu tries to reach them, and a lantern falls, setting the place on fire. Forced by the flames, Sabu breaks out of his cage and escapes. The next day, Sabu's trail of destruction reaches the town. Meanwhile, Lolita, on her way home, is attacked by him. She faints, but when she wakes up, she sees the creature is just watching her. He even saves her from a fall and takes care of her, in total Beauty and the Beast fashion. She even bandages his wound. The tender moment is interrupted by Gonzalez and his henchmen, who use a red powder to capture Sabu again. Gonzalez reveals his plan: use the monster to kill Zorro and then blackmail the town, taking Lolita hostage. When Gonzalez's goons start harassing Lolita, Sabu becomes enraged, breaks free, and goes after them. Zorro arrives in the nick of time, and Lolita begs him to save the gentle beast. As the army prepares to fire cannons, Zorro uses the red berries to distract and calm Sabu. Nevertheless, Captain Jekyll, who is anything but a good guy, orders his men to blow up the cliff where Sabu is standing. The cliff collapses, but Sabu makes an Olympic-level leap straight into the ocean and swims toward his home, leaving Lolita and Zorro to watch his escape. A gang of outlaws known as the Golden Tigers, a sort of Robin Hood crew from California, raids an army warehouse, steals a massive amount of grain, and sets the place on fire. Lieutenant Gabriel arrives at the crime scene, absolutely furious about the theft. But then comes the plot twist. The stolen grain is mysteriously returned to the townspeople, who are overjoyed. The Golden Tigers become local heroes, with kids even playing games pretending to be them. Rumors start to fly that Lieutenant Gabriel is undergoing a redemption arc after he's seen being incredibly kind to children and helping the townspeople. The leader of the Tigers, a man named Rico, plans to use this new Gabriel to get to his boss, the cruel commander Raymond. Diego, who's never one to be fooled, warns his friend Rico that it smells like a trap, but Rico doesn't listen. Gabriel continues his act, confessing his shame over the army's actions to Lolita, and even tolerating a prank from the children without complaint, convincing Rico the change is real. But Gabriel's kindness was all a trap, set by Commander Raymond. To make the bait work, Raymond publicly humiliates and arrests Gabriel. In the cell, one of Rico's men appears, and Gabriel agrees to help ambush Raymond, revealing the details of his next patrol. The ambush, however, turns out to be a trap for them. The Golden Tigers find themselves surrounded by Raymond's soldiers. When all seems lost, Zorro appears. He fights Commander Raymond, creating the perfect diversion for the outlaws to cause a rock slide and escape. Later, Raymond confronts Gabriel, revealing he knew he was secretly rooting for Zorro to win. win, leaving the lieutenant completely cornered. During a picnic, Diego, Lolita, and Bernard spot a strange mountain near a forest. Lolita quickly shares the local legend. That is the Vampire Woods, a place from which no one returns. Bernardo, braver than he is wise, decides to go in alone to explore. When his dog, Figaro, returns terrified, Diego and Lolita follow him into the woods, but instead of vampires, they find a hidden, idyllic valley with Bernardo nursing a sprained ankle. There, a giant, muscular native named Wolf appears, helps Bernardo, and explains the place isn't haunted, but is the sacred land of his people. He makes the three promise to keep it a secret, like the first rule of Fight Club. Meanwhile, Lieutenant Gabriel sends Sergeant Gonzalez to escort a businessman, Mr. Ennio, into the forest. His plan? To build a luxury resort there. As soon as they enter, the soldiers are met with a shower of arrows from the natives. Gabriel, losing patience, orders his men to bring in a cannon to destroy the hidden village. Zorro and Little Zorro arrive to help, but the tribe's elder refuses, saying it's their duty to protect the forest. He tells the story of how the Great Spirit created the place as a sanctuary for his people. In the ensuing battle, Wolf is shot and killed. As the soldiers prepare to fire the cannon at a cave, Zorro intervenes. The cannon blast ends up causing a massive earthquake, which triggers a landslide and completely blocks the entrance to the valley. The soldiers and Mr. Ennio are forced to retreat, their plans in ruins. In the end, Zorro, somewhat unintentionally, manages to save the sacred land and its people. Chris unveils a life-sized Zorro dummy to a crowd of excited children, like a giant action figure, but Diego immediately gives them a reality check. Displaying it in town is asking for trouble since the military views Zorro as a rebel. Meanwhile, a new physician, Anita, arrives in town, and the old doctor, Timoteo, is found drunk in a river, complaining that all the men are faking illnesses just to get an appointment with her. In a clinic packed with fakers, Anita tries to hypnotize Sergeant Gonzalez to discover Zorro's identity, but it doesn't work. Later, the drunk doctor Timoteo knocks over Bernard, who ends up cutting his head. At the clinic, Anita hypnotizes the boy, who drops the bombshell. Diego is Zorro. Cleverly, she makes him instantly forget what he said. That night, Bernard has a sinister nightmare of Anita looking like a winged demon.
Tell me who Zorro is!
The next day, a trap is set. The cook is pushed in front of a carriage, and in the confusion, Bernard is hypnotized again to tell Diego his father has been shot. Diego rushes off and is, of course, arrested by Lieutenant Gabriel. At the clinic, Lolita finds Dr. Timoteo tied up. He tells her the whole truth. Anita is an imposter named Sogar, a man in disguise seeking revenge because Zorro killed his brother. In the desert, Sogar hangs Diego's father over quicksand, threatening to cut the rope if Diego doesn't confess to being Zorro. Diego denies it, but as Sogar is about to cut the rope, Zorro appears. After a quick duel, Zorro disarms Sogar, who falls into the quicksand and refuses help, preferring to sink. To top it off, Zorro wounds Gabriel's arm to ensure everyone's escape. A group of kids led by Bernard finishes repairing a giant wooden model of Zorro on a horse. The toy is like a scrap metal transformer with a moving sword and pedal-powered wheels. The fun ends when a friend runs up in a panic, warning them of a robbery. Nearby, a gang led by an eye-patched man named Snake attacks the Governor General's carriage. The bandits tie up the governor, and Snake reveals he was paid to kill him. Watching from a cliff, Bernard and his friends decide to take action. Using the wooden Zorro, with Bernard inside dressed as Little Zorro, they roll down the hill and scare the daylights out of the bandits. They use tricks like rolling flaming tumbleweeds and throwing tomatoes. The finishing blow comes when the dummy hits Snake with a hidden spring-loaded boxing glove, sending the bandits fleeing. After freeing the governor, Bernard comes up with a bold idea: to kidnap him to force him to listen to their complaints about the army's corruption. The news spreads like wildfire. Zorro has kidnapped the governor. The army, with Lieutenant Gabriel, surrounds the abandoned house where the children are hiding. The little heroes send their demands via arrow, forcing Sergeant Gonzalez to deliver cream cakes while stripped to his underwear and insisting the army return their unjust taxes. That night, we discovered that Lieutenant Gabriel and Commander Raymond hired Snake. The plan was to draw the army away so Snake could finish the job and frame Zorro, but the real Zorro overhears everything and shows up to warn the kids. The assassins set a house on fire, but Zorro creates a diversion, and the children escape in their wooden Zorro. Zorro confronts Snake and, despite being blinded by a smoke bomb, uses the sound of falling coins to locate him and carve a Z on his shirt before he escapes. After a storm causes a landslide, a boy named Jeff watches in horror as his father and other miners are trapped underground. The next day, Jeff collapses in front of Diego and Lolita, begging for help. They rush to the mine, but the entrance is blocked by giant boulders. Pickaxes are useless, and an old man says they need gunpowder, but the only supply is held by the army. Commander Raymond, the typical bureaucrat he is, denies the request, fearing the explosives could fall into the wrong hands. Left with no choice, Zorro and his partner Little Zorro break into the barracks, knock out the guards, and steal a barrel of gunpowder. They are confronted by a new officer, Lieutenant Placido, but manage to escape in a wagon. Placido and his soldiers give chase, and he nearly hits Little Zorro with a crossbow bolt. Cornered on a destroyed bridge, Zorro and Placido face off. The standoff is broken when Jeff, trying to warn Zorro about the bridge, falls into the river. Without a second thought, Zorro dives in to save the boy. Witnessing this heroic act, Placido has a change of heart. He helps pull them to safety and agrees to help. Together, they use the gunpowder to blast open the mine entrance and free the miners. But just as the families are reunited, Commander Raymond arrives and arrests Placido for treason. To save the righteous officer, Zorro forces him to pretend he was kidnapped and fakes his own death during the escape, with the help of a deliberately misplaced crossbow shot from Placido. Later, Zorro reveals to Little Zorro that he survived because the bolt hit Placido's service medal, which he had given to Zorro. The ordeal forges an unlikely alliance, giving Zorro a friend within the army. At the docks, Commander Raymond proudly inspects a new cannon aboard a ship, a BFG-style weapon he bought from a trading company. The plan is to keep the new weapon a secret, but Little Zorro, who seems to have a superpower for being in the right place at the right time, overhears everything. He sees the destructive potential of the weapon and runs to warn Diego. As the cannon is transported through town under a tarp, Diego spots a dragon emblem and has a flashback to Spain. He realizes instantly, this is no ordinary cannon, it fires explosive shells. It's basically an 18th century grenade launcher. Meanwhile, Raymond's lackeys, Gabriel and Placido, visit the farm of an old man named Rob to inform him the army will be conducting training exercises there. In reality, they want to force the old man to sell his land, but Rob is unfazed and tells them to get lost. That night, Zorro and Little Zorro sneak into the barracks to blow up the cannon, but are discovered. During their escape, Little Zorro is grazed by a shot from Lieutenant Placido, and the mission is a failure. The next day, the army begins its training, firing blanks at Rob's farm. But when Zorro doesn't show up, Raymond gets desperate and orders them to use live ammunition. Watching the farm get shelled, Placido has a crisis of conscience, decides he won't be an accomplice, steals the cannon, and flees.
Stop firing, Commander! Yeah!
His escape is covered by Captain Jekyll, who arrives in the nick of time and stops the attack, revealing that Raymond is using illegal weapons. Placido hands the cannon over to the farmers, but they refuse to use it, showing they don't want to become murderers. For deserting, Placido is arrested, but Zorro frees him. Adrift, Placido is given a new chance by Captain Jekyll, a secret mission and a letter for the Governor General. He rides off toward the sunrise, now joined by Zorro and Little Zorro, ready for a new beginning. The South India Trading Company now has a cannon so ridiculous it looks like something out of a video game. It's stashed atop a mountain in a fortress that would make Area 51 look like a playground, complete with massive walls, soldiers, guard dogs, and traps everywhere. Everyone's putting their faith in Zorro to destroy this Death Star, but for the first time, Diego himself isn't sure he can pull it off. To add to the drama, he accidentally overhears Lolita getting engaged to some rich guy. Heartbroken, he goes into nothing to lose mode and decides to take on the suicide mission alone. He ties up Bernard, aka Little Zorro, to make sure no one follows him, and heads into action. But first, he can't resist giving a sleeping Lolita a kiss in a scene worthy of a romance movie. The mission is straight out of Metal Gear Solid. He uses kites and decoys to distract the guards, sneaks through the fortress, dodges traps, and outsmarts the guard dogs. After all those acrobatics, he finally reaches his target and kaboom! The demon cannon is turned to scrap metal. During his escape, Bernard, who somehow broke free, shows up to rescue him. Diego returns home feeling on top of the world for having accomplished such a feat. And to top it all off, Lolita tells him she dumped her fiancé and decided to stay single. It seems Diego's drama was a tad premature. After so many failures, the South India Trading Company's headquarters decides it's time for an audit of the California branch. The local president, knowing the jig is up, panics. He has a ledger detailing all of his crooked dealings with the Spanish army and decides to flee with the evidence. Zorro tries to capture him to get the book, but a new player enters the game, a bounty hunter hired by the company itself. The guy is like a corporate Boba Fett, sent to bring the president and the ledger back to Spain and make him pay for his scams. Zorro and the bounty hunter throw down, and it's clear the newcomer is on another level. Zorro gets a brutal beatdown and is gravely wounded. To add insult to injury while trying to escape, he's shot by Spanish soldiers. Seeing the hero on the brink of death, little Zorro takes a desperate measure. He fetches Lolita to tend to Zorro's wounds, which means the secret is out. She sees that Zorro is Diego. Lolita removes the bullet and bandages him up, but she doesn't stop there. Instead of freaking out, she decides to help. She dons a Zorro costume and rides through town to keep up appearances and save the day, in true girl power fashion. Meanwhile, the bounty hunter manages to capture the president and the ledger, returning to Spain with his mission accomplished. In the end, a recovering Diego promises that the day of reckoning with the army is drawing ever closer. Things just got serious. Things have really hit the fan. The army decides they've had enough and stages a coup d'etat to take out the governor. But of course, Zorro and little Zorro, like a 19th century version of Batman and Robin, aren't about to let that slide and set off to rescue him. And the biggest surprise? Lolita, who up until now was the damsel, decides to channel her inner Sarah Connor from the Terminator and grabs a machine gun to help. Yes, a machine gun. With the governor safe in a hideout, the gang prepares for the army's inevitable all-out assault. In the midst of all the tension, there's a sweet moment between Diego and Lolita, the calm before the storm. And just when you think things can't get any crazier, Diego's father and the housekeeper show up and drop a bombshell. They've known all along that Diego was Zorro. With no time to be shocked, they join the party to help. Now, it's like the Avengers of California. Diego and all his friends unite to put the army back in its place. The fight is so intense that even Gonzalez, who's always been a wimp, finally musters the courage and stands up to his superiors. With the army defeated, Lolita asks about Zorro. Diego then gives that classic hero's response. He says that Zorro isn't needed for now, but that whenever injustice rears its ugly head and people need help, he will return. Basically, just turn on the Zorro signal.
Zorro will only appear when the people need him. We never know when a wicked man like Raymond may show up again. When that time comes, the people will need Zorro once more.